Hi, my name is Danny, and I'm going to take you through a small step process on how to set up a ball python enclosure. This is my ball python. Her name is Eden. She is about 2 years old now, and she is actually a piebald ball python. She is a piebald because she has white spots that interrupt her normal pattern. You can tell she's a ball python by the shape of her head, and actually the starting pattern of her head is what normal ball pythons typically look like. It just breaks off as you go more and more down. Ball pythons live for about 30 years and grow to maximum 5 feet long, but typically not all snakes get to that maximum, or not all ball pythons will get to that maximum length, because if you have a pet, you typically don't want to overfeed your pet. Snakes that get overfed are usually meant for breeding so that they can make their clutch a little bit faster and better. So, ball pythons are tropical snakes. So they're going to need a more tropical tank, something that can hold moisture very well. You're going to need to start with at least a 40-gallon tank. I recommend the ones with front doors, they're just nicer. And to get at least 2 heat sources and 1 UVB source. So you need a sun lamp, which is the heat lamp, similar to the one reflecting in my glasses, that will emit shine and heat. The second one is going to be a heating pad, which is just a mat that heats up on its own when you plug it in, and that goes under the tank. So one goes on top, one goes below, and they're both going to stay on one side of the tank, not throughout scattered, because you want just one heat area so that the rest of the tank stays relatively cool for them to cool down in, and they can regulate their own temperature very nicely. The third one that I usually recommend, because it helps with circadian rhythm and helps them see at night since they are nocturnal, is a nighttime light bulb. So it is a purple bulb that emits heat, and it sort of copies how the moon looks at night. It helps them see a little bit better because they have slits in their eyes. I know you can't see it because their eyes are pretty dark, but ball pythons have slits in their eyes, which means they can see better in the dark than they can in the light. But they also just can't see very well at all. They use their tongue. I don't know if you can see. Well, you've seen it. They use their tongue to smell anything that they can, put it back into their mouth, and they have smell sensors kind of around the edge of their mouth here where they bring their tongue back in. It helps them tell what's around their area. They also do just have regular heat sensors, so both of those combined helps them figure out if there's any prey nearby or any threats. You're also going to want to put things in the enclosure that resemble or also contain a more humidity grabbing effect. So you want a lot of moss, and you want also a substrate that will absorb moisture pretty quickly, so like dirt or bark, or aspen is also a good one, but dirt is going to hold the most moisture. You want a lot of moss for extra moisture. You also definitely want a few climbing branches, nothing too sharp because their scales are actually pretty easy to poke into and they don't really like it. I wouldn't want to put my $500 snake in any danger. I know that seems ridiculous, but that's actually a really good price for the pattern that she has. And normal ball pythons do not cost as much, I promise, but I just wanted to go above and beyond for my first one. So you also want your water bowl to be on the cool side of the tank so that the water does not evaporate, 1, and 2, so your snake has an easy access port to get to in case she overheats or heat. Getting into water is the fastest way a snake can cool themselves down, so to make sure that the water is on the cool side, make sure that the snake can actually cool down pretty well. Take a little bath and get cool. You also need something called a shed hide. You can make the shed hide out of anything. As long as it can hold moisture really well and doesn't rot away, you can make it out of anything. It needs to be a confined space, kind of like a cubby, that has a lot of moss in it, a lot of dirt, and it's constantly wet. It needs to stay constantly wet. It's an area that's filled with so much moisture and warmth that it helps them shed their last layer of skin really, really nicely, and you have a healthy snake if you have a healthy shed. Always want a shed that comes off in one piece. That's a good sign. That means your shed hide works. Do keep it on the hot side so that it stays both moist and hot, and it actually condenses and stays hot and moister for longer. I know I said moist a lot. It's not a very fun word, but it's kind of one you need to use. You also, for a little fun, you can put a bunch of fake plants or real plants, if you like your bioactive vibe, across the floor for them to rummage through, because they're kind of stupid and they like rummaging through things. They don't really have it. Their drive is to just find food. So exploring through things where there's not really a threat kind of brings them a little joy. They don't necessarily always know where stuff is, so that's why you usually rearrange it every now and again, and it makes them so happy, so excited. Whoa, a new place. Give them different hides. Cork hides I usually recommend because they also contain moisture absorbency better than any plastic hides would. But if you want to look bougie with your fake hides, that's perfectly fine. With all that, as long as you keep feeding them a regular diet of mice and or rats, depending on the size of your snake. Right now, my snake can take a small rat, which is about double the size of her belly. So snakes, or ball pythons, can actually expand to double the width of their belly, which is kind of insane considering how small that neck is compared to her belly. But I've seen her do it. It was pretty cool. I had to watch her the whole time to make sure she needed to be fed every day. Is immediately the easiest animal to take care of in my book, and snakes are definitely that animal. Snakes can survive 4 to 8 months without eating any food because they are ambush predators. So typically you only feed ball pythons once a week, especially when they're babies. Feed them something small once a week. Make sure that they digest it properly and you see the poop before you try feeding them again. This girl only gets one rat every 2 to 3 weeks, depending on how big her poop was. I know it sounds weird, but healthy poop. That's the only way we can tell to make sure that they're doing okay, is through poop. Taking care of feeding is not necessarily that big of a hassle, especially if you're feeding frozen. That way they just stay in the freezer. No, they will not contaminate anything because it's other meat. It's the same thing. It's just meat. Do frozen. I do recommend it. It's a lot easier to keep up with than doing live because you have to go constantly out and search for live food, and not a lot of stores are holding live food right now because people keep buying it. So stick with frozen. It may not be as nutritionally rich, but for circumstances, I think it's a lot better. It's especially easier to feed. If you feed your snake live when they've been eating frozen, they're never going to want to eat frozen again. That's just fact. They know when they've had a good meal. They will starve themselves to get that good meal. So yeah, in conclusion, ball pythons are, in my opinion, one of the best animals and easiest animals to take care of because they're insanely easy to train. The enclosure, you can buy one super big one. That's all the one they're going to need for the rest of their life. All the materials stay the same. You can switch out hides if you want to, but you don't have to. And they don't have to eat every day. You can go on vacation for 2 weeks and not worry about your snake. Easiest animal I've ever come across. I don't need to hire a sitter for her. I do recommend that people don't treat all snakes as such dangerous creatures, especially since ball pythons are one of the most docile snakes on the planet. They're really, really easy to handle. They're not going to do anything. They don't even know where things are most of the time. I wish the stereotype of snakes would not be so cruel, because these things are pretty cool creatures. They're also a lot nicer than people give them credit for, because all they think about are the venomous snakes, the rattlesnakes, the copperheads that want to go out and kill you. And also because they are the most docile snakes on the planet, a lot of people wonder, oh my god, Do they kill your dog? Do they try to kill you? No. Snakes will only try to kill you if you are a threat and they hold venom, which ball pythons don't, or they think they are big enough to eat you. She's not big enough to eat me, so she doesn't try to kill me. Snakes don't just mindlessly kill. It's like having to flex a 250-pound weight like every time that something comes across you. They only try to strike and grab when they think you can fit in their mouth. And they are, in my opinion, the best animals. Not to mention this pattern. Get a load of that. Oh, she's so pretty. All right, that was my 30 seconds of appreciation. Thank you for listening. I hope maybe this lightened your mood about snakes a little bit if you didn't like them too bad in the first place. They really are great creatures, and I wish more people would take more loving to them. Thank you.